Nebraska, along with many other states, is experiencing a stretch of well below normal temperatures this week. Snow fell across the state Monday night into Tuesday, with more in the forecast for much of the state this weekend. UNL Extension state climatologist Al Dutcher sat down with us Thursday to explain why so much of the U.S. is under the cold snap and to give his outlook for the winter season. We've had some fun temperatures in this state and many other states across the United States this week. Why?
Well, in simple terms, we basically had a repeat performance of what we experienced for the vast majority of last winter. That is the old term polar vortex. And really what happens is we have a blocking high pressure that sits up over the western United States, extends up into Alaska. All the energy from storms entering into the Gulf of Alaska are deflected up over top of that ridge. And then, of course, that energy comes down the front side of the ridge, basically bringing that polar area in from the Arctic circles and intensifies the trough in the eastern United States. And on the front of that trough, you have a blocking high-pressure ridge east of Greenland, so everything kind of stagnates. And so in order for that to break down, you either have to have that trough in the east of us weaken, or you have to have that ridge break down in Canada, in western portions of Canada, in Alaska. And that's exactly what the models are forecasting as we move forward in time, that we'll start to see an erosion of that blocking ridge, and we'll start to see more energy coming into the Pacific Northwest instead of being deflected up into Alaska and Canada. And therefore, once that happens, you're going to get troughing action in the western United States, building a ridge into the center part of the country, and hence we start to warm up with a trough to the west of us.
All right, we warm up then. Then how long does that continue, as in across the winter? What are you expecting to see for temperature?
Well, if I could get that forecast right, I'd be pretty much a rich man. And I think that's the overall writing question of what's going to happen. You know, from a standpoint, we're dealing with a very weak El Nino event. We have seen signs of that in regards to tropical systems come at the Baja Peninsula during the late summer, early fall period, getting deflected up into the southwestern United States, and then getting entrained into frontal boundaries, moving across the northern tier of states. So Husker Harvest days was an example where we had one of those tropical systems entrained in the front. We had widespread heavy precipitation and some localized flooding. Most recently, we've seen that same event occur with Hurricane Vance. That did the same thing down in Texas and Oklahoma, where we had a 2-day spell of basically moderate rain that fell continuously. Really did put a damper in some of the drought areas. So as we go forward, that area becomes less of a problem because we're coming to the end of hurricane season. But what we're watching for is whether or not there's still enough warm water there to support these troughs coming to the western United States and energize them if they move into the desert southwest. And so you'll get these southern stream storms that basically bypass Nebraska to our south. That would be your El Nino signal. The other thing we're dealing with is this polar vortex, which is your La Nina-like signal, because generally during La Nina events we have a very strong polar jet. So what we've seen this entire year is this flopping back and forth between these polar outbreaks and then very warm conditions. And I just don't see any reason to see that break up right now. There's this high pressure system that doesn't appear to be locking into place. So I think what we're going to deal with is these defined periods of very cold, stormy weather, followed by an intense warm spell as a new trough moves into the western United States, only to be followed by another wetter storm coming into the south of us and then moving up into the northeastern United States and drawing that cold air in. So this oscillation back and forth, I believe, is going to be the thing we're going to deal with. As we get to the second half of the winter, things get a lot more difficult because El Nino becomes less of a player, and then we have to worry about those late spring storms with a very energized northern jet moving through, and of course that's when we get the big windup of our blizzards and big snowstorms during the late winter.
Does that indicate then that you expect it to be a wet winter?
I wouldn't go that far. I've always been leery about making a precipitation forecast in the winter because some people will take snowfall as a measurement of your precipitation. I look at the water equivalency of that moisture as the most important criteria, and that's more difficult. Snow-wise, I think we'll be well ahead of last year's snow season. There wasn't much of one here anyhow. The big question is, do these come in terms of Arctic fronts moving through where we get our snowfall, or do we get southern storms? And right now I'd be leaning to a combination of both, which should increase us back up to at least normal snowfall, if not slightly above normal snow.
Beginning of the water year is October 1st, correct? Where do we stand?
Well, we haven't had a lot of precipitation since October 1st, but we had a lot of it from late August through September. And so we have the southeast and the panhandle in very good shape. In fact, we got profiles in some portions of the southeast and the panhandle that are very close to full. The center part of the state has had a recent drying trend and promoted good harvest activity. What we need to see is the ground thaw out a little bit, get one good storm on top of it to wet that surface layer back up, and we should be in fine shape till the spring. So overall, we're in much better shape than we have been in the last 3 years, but I'm greedy. I'd like to see another event before we solidly freeze that soil up so that we know that we're running into good moisture at the surface going into the spring-fall season.